Just dive right in if you want to get in the time machine with me.
Yeah.
Of course, we think about time machines as DeLoreans, and you might be one of the only people I've ever talked to who's driven a DeLorean at some point.
The cars weren't that great. I'm actually, I've been driving a Jaguar XK for 10 years, and it got totaled. I lent it to my daughter. I actually gave it to my kid, and somebody hit her and totaled it. So I really miss it. So I found the 2015 in Kentucky. So I'm flying out there next weekend to pick this car up because it's the last year they made the XK, and I just love that model.
Amazing. Well, bad luck with the
black, you know, just great. The perfect luxury sports car.
You've had enough nice cars crashed in your life, like
Yeah.
No more.
No more accidents, you know, just nice cars now.
So let's take it all the way back to the very first Kiss record, 1974. A classic, obviously, in many, many ways. And obviously a record you've talked about plenty of times over the years, and those of us who have read your book, and, you know, we know a lot about it.
I used to know a lot about it. I mean, we're going back 40 plus years.
Yeah.
My memory isn't what it used to be, but let's take a stab at it.
Well, let me ask you this: when you see a copy of that first Kiss record, you know, when a fan brings it to you to sign or something like that, what are the first sort of feelings or memories that are conjured from just looking at that thing, holding it in your hand?
Well, it was a benchmark in my career. It was, you know, the first time my face was on a record ever. You know, prior to that, I was in a group called Malimo. We had recorded for RCA a half a record, and then they decided never to, you know, follow through with the deal, and that thing fell apart. But, you know, Kiss was the first time I released an album. I remember going to Alexander's on Fordham Road in the Bronx and buying the record.
Yes.
So, you know, I was looking at it and going, wow, this is real. And then I remember the first time I was driving in a car with a friend, and one of the Kiss songs came on the radio, and that was a real special moment. So, you know, yeah, that was like a benchmark in my career, number one.
Now, nobody had cell phones back then, and there wasn't social media and all of that. So when you go into the record store to buy your own record for the first time, are you able to tell the clerk, like, hey, that's me under the makeup, or do you still have to protect the identity, you know, all the way back then?
Well, I mean, for years, we tried to protect our identity. I mean, that was our gimmick, you know, wearing the makeup. Nobody knew what we looked like without it. I mean, I can't remember how many times Bill O'Coin told me, you know, we paid off a photographer who had photographed us, you know, without makeup, you know, to squash it. And you know, a lot of the magazines really, you know, got pictures of us, but wouldn't print them because, you know, they were selling so many copies of magazines with Kiss on the cover with makeup. They didn't want to, you know, ruffle any feathers.
Yeah.
So, you know, the magazines kind of played along with us. And I think the first time a magazine printed a picture of us without makeup was Scream.
And you remember that because then it was like, well, they're on the shit list.
Remember that.
It's nice that everybody would participate because it was ultimately good. Yeah, like you said, it's good for the magazine, just like it's good for the band. Do you think would it be possible for a band to pull that off now? In the pandemic maybe, but pre-pandemic, would it be possible to do that? Because, you know, I'm thinking about like Slipknot, right? When they got some new members there were these internet detectives who were like, we saw this tattoo on the guy's hand and we connected it to this and we figured out who the guy is, like immediately.
Now, it's hard to say. There's, music has changed so dramatically from when I grew up, doing all these interviews that I've done on, about Origins Vol.2 and thinking about all the bands that influenced me in the 60s and emulating that. There's not, groups like Led Zeppelin, Cream, The Who, the Stones, the Beatles, today you don't get it. I'm not hearing new bands that have that impact and have that unique sound that, it's them immediately. When you heard a Jimi Hendrix record, you knew it was Jimi Hendrix. Today everything's kind of homogenized and reprocessed and,
especially rock radio.
It
a lot of
is.
the songs are interchangeable, and I think a lot of them are being written by the same couple of people that come in and write songs with the bands. So Hotter Than Hell, which was, Kiss, especially in the 70s. I mean, you guys were the blueprint for cranking out records. When you think about these days, bands taking 5, 6, 10 years between an album, Kiss in the 70s was just like album after album. So Hotter Than Hell, I think about that as a little darker than the first record.
It's darker. The first, when you mention Hotter Than Hell, the first thing that comes to mind is the cover, because it was so revolutionary.
Yeah.
We got one of the best photographers in California, Norman Seif, to shoot the black and white photo session. And I had gotten into a car accident the night before and I could only put makeup on half my face. Or maybe that was a photo session following the album cover. But working with Norman was great. And I believe he came up with the Japanese artwork idea around the black and white photo. And, I thought the cover was very distinctive looking and wasn't reminiscent of anything I remember seeing.
Yeah.
So I thought that broke some new ground. The music, I don't, when I think of Hotter Than Hell, I don't think it was probably as exciting as our first album, because those songs we had been playing and recording and working on for years. And all of a sudden, our record company goes, you got to do another record. And we had to throw these songs together.
Yeah.
So, the songs on Hotter Than Hell probably aren't quite up to par as some of the songs on the first record, but,
Well, Kiss is the ultimate.
With what you got.
You hear that it's a cliche in the music business, and I almost wonder if it began with Kiss. You hear people say, you get your whole career to write your first album and 6 months to write the follow-up. I wonder if Kiss is the origin of that, that cliche.
I don't know. Somebody told me that we did 4 albums in 2 years or something.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah,
3 albums,
75.
Live. It was, when someone, when I think back, it doesn't seem like it was that short of a time span, but it was.
Yeah.
And we were touring extensively. So I don't know how we pulled it off, to be honest with you. I was kind of loaded half the time. So I just kind of went with the flow. I was like on this roller coaster ride, holding on for dear life.
Put me here, put me there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dress to Kill is one of my favorite records, not only from Kiss, but just in general. And I have, even as we're speaking, I wish I could show it to you, but I don't know how. But my background on my computer is from, it's not the album cover, but it's from that photo shoot of, you guys in the suits. And I think the one I have, Gene's like reading the newspaper. And I just love that look of
We didn't have suits. We raided Bill O'Coin's closet. None of us had suits. We were getting paid $75 a week or something. We really hadn't made it yet. Alive was the record that made Kiss international phenomena. But prior to Alive, we were still struggling. And, you know, if Alive wouldn't have hit, the band might have folded, you know, financially. You know, it cost a lot of money to put on our show. So, you know, we weren't making exorbitant amounts of money on the road because of that. And, but, you know, once we came out with Alive, it was just like, forget it.
Yeah.
You know, it was like because we were such a strong group live, you know, it was like a souvenir of our concert.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it was such a special record. And it was on it broke all records for the amount of time it was on the charts. But
and it also sent people backwards to then go, okay, I want to check out the records that these songs were on, studio versions. And then they go, oh, there's all these other records before.
Yeah, and they, you know, I listened back to some of the songs and they're so slow. And live, we played the songs a lot faster.
Yeah.
You know, I think cocaine had something to do with that.
Well, performance enhancement, one might say.
You know, and adrenaline. But, you know, it's, you know, I just kind of went with the flow. You know, everybody knows I never took a guitar lesson, but most guitar players cite me as being one of the major influences why they picked up guitar. And most of those guys say it was the Alive record that did it for them.
A lot of famous guitar players with your face tattooed on their bodies. So, yeah.
My good buddy, Dimebag Darrell.
Of course.
In peace.
Of course. Before we move past Alive, even though I want to, on Dress to Kill, I want to talk about Getaway, because that's an Ace song with a Peter Criss lead vocal. What do you remember about that song coming together and how it came to be?
I remember writing it relatively quickly. And I remember at the time, I still didn't feel comfortable as a lead vocalist. So I asked Peter to sing it. You know, I mean, me becoming a vocalist was a slow evolution. And finally, I got up enough nerve to do it when I wrote Shock Me. And I think the first time I performed Shock Me live was at Madison Square Garden, performing a lead vocal in front of 18,000 people in my hometown. That was a little nerve-wracking. But once I got that, once I belted it out and it went over well, you know, the floodgates had been opened, you know, and then I wanted to sing more and more.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to think about that in a sense as your first gig as a frontman at the Garden.
Yeah.
So you already talked about how, you know, famously Alive came out and blew the doors open and got so many, you know, that's when the Kiss phenomenon really, really got kickstarted. So then going into Destroyer, you know, you've just had this run of 3 studio records and the live record in 2 short years, and then Destroyers the very next year. Obviously, you know, I think for most Kiss fans and for people who aren't diehard Kiss fans but know about Kiss, when they think about Kiss, I think Destroyer is the record that they think about. You know, that's the cover that you picture. That's a lot of the songs that are, you know, always in the set list. What sort of pressure was there coming off of Alive to then go make?
Well,
hey, you guys got to make a great record.
Top an album that goes double platinum, you know.
Yeah.
And we decided to bring in Bob Ezrin on production, who was Alice Cooper's producer, and had, you know, helped Alice put out, you know, several hits. And was a great songwriter, a great producer, a little bit of a dictator, but, you know, everybody has their quirks. But, you know, a lot of Bob's, you know, his stamp is on that record on several songs. I mean, Bob was the one who wrote the solo in Love Gun, not Love Gun.
Detroit Rock City?
Detroit Rock City. Bob sang those notes. I played the lead, and then we figured out the harmony, and Paul played the harmony. Yeah, I mean, I'm the kind of, I don't take credit unless I did something, you know. I give that all to Bob, you know. Bob was a genius. He was a great musician, and he was very proficient on the piano. and he knew music. He was schooled. He knew what he was talking about, even though we didn't see eye to eye on everything. Especially later on down the road with the elder. That was.
Oh, we'll get there.
But at the time, Bob was like God to us in a sense. If Bob said something, we did it.
Yeah. And you guys did that one at Electric Ladyland. Do you have any memories about the studio itself?
Which one?
Electric Ladyland in New York. Or the first session for that anyway, right?
That was an amazing studio. I mean, it was like it's hard to describe. I was there a couple of years ago, and I did an interview there and played guitar with some guy, and you can find it on YouTube. But it's not the same. They changed it a little. But I remember that Electric Ladyland was where we recorded our first 5 demos. And originally Ron Johnson was producing them, but then we got Eddie Kramer to come in because he was working with a different band in a different studio at Electric Lady, and he came in and started screwing around with the dials and the buttons and equalizers, and so Eddie had a lot to do with that record, those demos rather, and that's when we met Eddie, and he got excited about the band, and there's a million stories in the history story.
Volume after volume after volume. Do you remember, you mentioned the demos. There was a demo from the Destroyer sessions that had Peter on vocals that I think you guys ended up giving to Michael DeBar. Is that right? Do you remember much about that song?
I don't remember. I know Michael.
Ain't None of Your Business.
And he's also a fine actor.
Yeah, he is.
I remember those guys opening for us when he was in Silverhead, and but I don't remember anything about him getting a song. I didn't write it.
Yeah, and I remember when he was in Power Station too. Yeah, no, I don't.
You told me I wrote the song. I believe you because my memory isn't what it used to be.
No, it wasn't one of yours. I want to talk also, since we're talking about Destroyer, real quick about Ken Kelly, the great artist and illustrator who did that iconic album cover. Do you remember, and of course he later did Love Gun. Do you remember much about Ken Kelly or meeting him or about?
Ken was an amazing artist, is still an amazing artist. He did Space Invader. I got him to paint that one. Ken I still bump into Ken at conventions, I do autograph sessions and stuff. Great guy, great artist. I know he was greatly influenced by Frank Frazetta,
Yes.
And as was many artists, other artists, not just Ken.
The Barbarians and the fantasy stuff.
And what can you say? The classic covers. And somehow, some way, Gene ended up with those paintings without asking me, even though I know it came out of the budget of the record. And in reality, all 4 of us owned the paintings. Somehow they ended up at Gene's house.
You need to get the X-Acto knife and each of you slice out your own 1/4 of the.
The at the time, I was having such a good time. I was going with the flow. Yeah, you want this painting? Take it. Yeah, whatever.
So after,
it was important to me back then, as I see it now.
Sure, of course. When you think about Beth, obviously, and not to belabor Beth because a lot's been said about that, but did that open the floodgates a little more for the idea that okay, Paul and Gene are mainly singing, but Peter's singing now, and Peter's got a hit song that he's singing. Was that sort of more of another step towards you eventually taking on more of a frontman role?
What was the question?
Sorry, just thinking about Beth becoming such a big hit, and did that kind of open the door within the band to you and Peter both?
It's ironic when you think about it, because all the big hits the biggest hits that are associated with Kiss weren't really indicative of the sound of Kiss.
Right.
I mean,
I Was
even
Made for
I
Loving You.
saw the success of my 1978 solo album.
Yeah.
I didn't want to record New York Groove, but Eddie Kramer, my producer, said, you got to do this song, Ace. Turned out to be my biggest hit. You know, Beth is a great song and was a huge hit. But I mean, when you think of Kiss, it really isn't indicative of our sound.
Yeah.
And then you think about I Was Made for Loving You, which is
Yeah.
a disco rock song, which isn't one of my favorite songs, but it was one of our biggest hits as well. So, I mean, it's a strange dichotomy on how our biggest hits weren't really indicative of the sound of the band.
And I think of those songs like Gateway Drugs, because if you heard I Was Made for Loving You on the radio and you liked it, and then you went and got other Kiss records, maybe then you became a Kiss fan, you know?
Yeah. Or vice versa, you know? listen to the records and go, I thought this was a disco band. And ends up in the trash.
So we've talked about Eddie Kramer a couple times already. So Eddie Kramer, of course, did Rock and Roll Over. What do you remember about Rock and Roll Over? That's another icon. The album covers. I mean, it's hard to talk about Kiss and not talk about the album covers every time, because that album covers.
Rock and Roll Over was a very different album for us because we decided not to do it in a recording studio. We actually rented out a theater, the Nanuet Theater in the Round, which at the time wasn't very far from where I was living. I just gotten married to Jeanette, and I was 30 minutes or less from the studio. And what we did was we set up on this round stage, and Eddie Kramer built a control room in one of the offices, and we had snakes going down to the drums and amps. And it was a very different record, but it was a lot of fun to do because, you know, we experimented with different types of recording techniques. And that's one of the things I loved about Eddie. And that's why I picked Eddie to be the producer for my studio record, because pretty much that whole album in 1978, we rented out the Colgate Mansion in Sharon, Connecticut, you know, by the Lime Rock racetrack. And pretty much me and Eddie did that whole record. I did all the overdubs, did all the vocals. I mean, I had Will Lee from the World's Most Dangerous Band play bass on 2 tracks, but I did all the vocals, other than, you know, except for the instrumental Fractured Mirror. And I got some help on New York Groove with a couple of girls singing backgrounds with me. But, you know, that was a very interesting experience. Me and Eddie played around with different types of ambience, because back then, yeah, you didn't have Pro Tools, you didn't have digital recording. So to get certain ambient sounds that you can get really easily now by pressing a button, you know, we had to create it. We had amplifiers in the marble bathroom. We did acoustic guitars in the library, which was mostly wood, you know, and we put the drums in the center of the entranceway and had microphones up on top on the second floor, and we got natural ambience on the drums that way. So, I mean, it was a fun process. And then we, you know, the recording, it was recorded in a truck. We had rented a truck, Fedco, with a board and monitors, and everything was done, you know, via wire. It was snakes, and it turned out great, though. I mean, yeah, I always like doing things spontaneously and trying new things, you know, whether it works or whether it doesn't work. At least you tried it, you know, instead of doing the same thing over and over again.
You know, before the solo record, of course, you mentioned Shock Me already. Love Gun, 76, another amazing album cover, another Eddie Kramer collaboration. And yeah, the first Ace vocal right up front on an Ace song, Shock Me. What was kind of the origin of that, and that being the song that you felt comfortable coming.
Pretty much, I wrote that song because I got electrocuted in Lakeland, Florida, on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the catalyst that made me come up with the idea for that song. You know, that was a fun record to do. It was great that, you know, it opened up with an Ace Frehley lead vocal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real signature guitar solo I did on that.
Oh, yeah.
I spent a lot of time working on that guitar solo. I know a lot of guitar players have asked me, how do you play that? How do you master that? How do you write these solos? I go, I don't know. I just come off the top of my head. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. The beauty with Pro Tools now, you know, digital recordings, that I do 3, 4, 5 guitar solos, and then we take the best part of each solo, you know, click a mouse and you got a solo.
Yeah, it's like, you know, Frankenstein.
Back then you used to have to cut tape with a razor blade. So that wasn't any fun. So, you know, I worked a little harder on solos back then. But, you know, I wasn't as good a guitar player back then as I am now. I didn't know as much, so it was a little harder for me and a little more stressful. You know, today when I think about doing a guitar solo, I just go, yeah, hit the record button and I just riff off, you know, and then my engineer throws together the solo and boom, you got it.
Real quickly, because I want to get back to the very first Ace solo album, because it's such an important monumental record. Let's talk about Alive 2 real quick. What was the thought process even going into, like, okay, we're going to do a sequel to Alive, and what did you learn from making the first Alive record that you applied to putting the second one together?
Well, it was mostly Eddie Kramer. You know, all we did was perform live. You know, but as you probably know, a lot of Alive 1 and 2 things were overdubbed in the studio.
Sure.
It wasn't a pure live record. I mean, I distinctly remember on Alive 1 that, you know, we had 3 separate loops of audience noise, and Eddie had tape machines, and he had these long loops of tape going around mic stands, going back to the machine, and he'd bring it up on a fader. This was one kind of audience response. This was another kind of audience response. This was another kind of audience response. And, you know, we cheated a little, but, you know, it's still a great record, you know, and it still captured the essence of the group live.
Yeah, and, you know, for as much as has been said about, you know, things being overdubbed and things like that, I think it's a little unfair to Kiss in light of how many bands currently, pop stars, rock bands, that's how every live record is. You know, there's some amount of polishing and fixing and tuning that goes into, because you want it to sound good, you know, and it doesn't mean it isn't real or authentic. It's still the guys playing. It's just, you know, it's just.
I mean, the whole idea about live records, I think, has been watered down because of YouTube. I mean, every time I want to see myself live, you know, all I have to do is wait a couple of days and somebody posts
right.
the show I did a few days ago.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the idea of trying to actually do a live album isn't that exciting anymore. And when I re-signed with E1 Music recently, you know, for 3 more albums, they wanted me to do a live record. And then I said, you know, do you really want me to do a live record? I mean, you know, with YouTube and everything else. And they actually said, you know, maybe it's better we do an Origins Vol.3. After they heard Origins Vol.2, and they were so thrilled with the way that came out that I think they said, maybe it's better we do an Origins Vol.3. And so there you go.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said,
you know, cut the idea for a live record.
Yeah, and like you said, with YouTube, it's like you're putting out a live record every day when you're on tour.
Right.
It's put out the next day. So yeah, so the first solo record, you mentioned, you know, Will Lee. let's talk about Anton Fig, who, of course, a lot of us grew up. I grew up watching him in the David Letterman band, and I always got a kick out of it because I knew he was the Ace drummer as a Kiss fan. What was your introduction to Anton Fig, and how did you get to know him, and how did he end up playing on that first record?
Well, Anton and me, hit it off immediately, but it was destiny that Anton was going to play on my record, because I remember a friend of mine, Larry Russell, who I went to high school with, called me up one day and he said, I was looking for a drummer for the record. And he said, you got to hear this guy, Anton Fig. And then like 2 or 3 days later, Eddie Kramer calls me up and goes, you got to hear this guy, Anton Fig. So I got it from two sources that, hadn't spoken to each other. So I said to myself, I better check out this guy, Anton Fig. And, we jammed together and, we just hit it off, like salt and pepper. And we've been close friends ever since. And he did so many of my records subsequently after 1978. I even played on some Kiss records.
Mm-hmm.
And when we decided to let Peter go, and we were looking for a replacement, I actually talked Paul and Gene into hiring Anton Fig to be the drummer in Kiss, and they agreed. And I called Anton and said, Anton, you're the new drummer in Kiss. And he was like head over heels excited. And then the next day I got a call from Paul and Gene, and they said, maybe Anton Fig isn't such a good idea, because me and him, we used to party together all the time, and they figured it, there might be a little dissension in the group because of that. So
they figured they just got rid of your other party.
Actually in Kiss for one day, but never made it to the stage.
Yeah, Gene and Paul probably figured they just got rid of your other party buddy.
Yeah,
they don't want to get another one in there.
Yeah.
And we talked, of course, about the infamous disco song, which I love as a song, and I know what you mean, though, obviously, about it not being indicative of Kiss.
It's a good song. It's a good song. For me, it's hard to play because, the chicka, 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 chicka. I'm playing that, and by the end of the song, my wrist starts cramping up because I'm playing the chicka, 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 chicka. The only break I get is when I do the guitar solo, and then Paul switches over to it. But
that was Desmond Child was in the mix on that song, yeah?
Well, Desmond has written some great hits, and, Desmond and Paul collaborated on that, and, you can't take away the fact that it was such a huge hit and appealed to so many people. But like I said earlier in our interview, it wasn't indicative of the sound of Kiss.
Yeah. And then Dynasty has 2 Ace lead vocal songs. And that's, coming off the back of the solo record. Was that kind of, without a doubt, critically, commercially, by every measure, the Ace solo record was the most popular and successful of the 4 Kiss solo records. Did you feel like you had a little more leverage then to come into Dynasty and go like, hey, I'm gonna sing a couple songs this time?
I have more leverage, but I also have more confidence. So, usually what would happen, all of us would kind of go off on our own and write songs with either alone or with someone else. And then we'd all, get together with the producer and pick the best songs. And luckily, 2 of the songs that I wrote, ended up on the record because they were good.
And then, of course, 2000 Man. So that's really 3 songs. And then, you mentioned Anton, ended up playing on some Kiss records. I think he plays on just about every track on that record, except for maybe 1 or 2. Yeah. What was the story there? How did Anton end up playing?
Peter was recovering from a car accident, and had become addicted to pain pills and stuff. So he really wasn't up for the task. So God bless Peter, but it wasn't working at that time.
And that brings us into 1980's Unmasked, which also had Anton playing drums, although Peter, of course, is on the cover and credited on the record. That's got Talk to Me. That's got Two Sides of the Coin, Torpedo Girl. You know, a lot of Ace going on Unmasked.
Well, Peter Girl was, I mean, a big departure. I don't, you know, I have no idea where I came up with that guitar riff. It just came out of nowhere. I think I wrote the bass part first, and then the guitar part interwoven with that bass line. Because most of the songs that I wrote in those days, I played bass on. And, you know, in retrospect, I think Gene might have been hurt a little, because a lot of times I wouldn't even ask him. I go, I'm playing bass on this song. I wrote it. I wrote the bass part. I want to do it. You know, I never really even gave him a chance to do his own, you know, characterization of what the bass part would be. But, you know, at that point, I guess I was becoming a little pushy about, you know, the way I wanted my songs to sound. So, be that as it may, it seemed to work at the time.
And that was at the record plant, if I'm not mistaken. Do you remember anything about recording Unmasked at the record plant?
Yeah, I remember we used to pump the drum sound through the back stairwell and use that as ambience to get you know, a nice big Led Zeppelin type drum sound.
Yeah.
And I remember one day, I think in the middle of a take, some garbage men opened up a door and they were pulling garbage out of the hallway, and, you know, it screwed up the whole take, and we had to like start over again. And I think Peter played a couple of takes naked. Peter used to say he played better naked. So sometimes Peter would take off his clothes and play a track. So, you know, whatever worked. You know, we all had our own little quirks and idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, the garbage men wasn't the ambiance that you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, in those days when I used to drink, I had a saying: "Give me a 6-pack of beer and lock me in a closet, and I'll be happy." You know? I guess it's the German in me. You know, I love beer, and it always put me in a good mood. And I was a happy drunk for the most part. You know, but obviously after years and years of alcohol abuse, you know, I started, you know, fooling around with the other kind of stuff that wasn't good. And, you know, it catches up to you. Well, luckily, September 15th, what's today's date?
September 3rd.
3rd, yeah. So on the 15th, I'll be celebrating 14 years without a drink.
Woo, amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought in my wildest dream I wouldn't have a beer in 14 years. But, you know, on the 15th, I'll be celebrating 14 years.
And thanks to that, we get Origins 2, and you're already thinking about Origins 3. All right, so we're now to the Elder, and a lot's been said about the Elder. I want to focus on a couple positive things about the Elder. Which one? I really like the Japanese only cover. And you know, and your picture is actually bigger than the other 3 guys on that Japanese cover. But that was the first record with the late great Eric Carr, the Fox.
Yeah.
What do you remember about? I mean, you know,
the Elder wasn't a bad record. Yeah, I've always said this. You know, when people talk to me about the Elder, it's not that the Elder was a bad record. It was the wrong record for that period of time. I think people were expecting something more like Creatures of the Night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but when Paul, Gene, and Bob said to me, let's do this concept record about, you know, this old guy, and it was never really, they never really defined the thing. It was just some kind of weird thing. I don't know. I was getting high a lot in those days, and but I just didn't think that the whole concept of the Elder was the right feel for that point in time for Kiss. And no one believed me. No one paid any attention to what I was saying. And of course, the record bombed. And when you look back in history, everybody goes, yeah, Ace was right and everybody else was wrong. But the record, you know, if you listen to the record today and it stands on its own, it's not a bad album at all. I did some amazing guitar solos on that record as well. But
no, in fact, there's a lot
that period of time.
There's a lot about it that I love, and I think in retrospect, when you take it outside of the context of the career and what needed to happen at the time and a record bombing and so forth, now that there's a whole catalog of Kiss records, you can go, oh, this record has the disco song, and then the Elder, that's the prog rock concept album, and then this, you know, it's like there's so much
I know
throughout the catalog. I think it has a nice spot in there. So the last Kiss thing I want to talk about before we get through the solo records, I know I can't keep you all day. You know, we talked about this when we were together before about, you know, of course, you being on the cover of Creatures of the Night and being in the video for I Love It Loud, which is one of my favorite music videos of all time, still to this day. And later they re-released.
Good song, you know, it was a good song.
Amazing song. And then later they re-released the album cover with Bruce Kulick on the cover. And, you know, it's funny that there's two album covers for Creatures of the Night, and neither of them have the guitar player that's on the album on the cover. So that was...
I had, you know, I had decided to leave the group, you know, before that album started. And I just felt I was more creative. You know, with the success of my 1978 solo album, you know, I realized I was a lot more creative away from Paul and Gene than with them. And you know, it was kind of the writing on the wall for me. I realized no matter what they did or said, you know, a lot of times we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. You know, those guys wanted to tour constantly. They were workaholics. You know, I was the kind of guy that wanted to tour for a while, make some money, enjoy my sports car, go fishing, hang out with my friends, shoot guns, you know, go bowling. You know, and they didn't have any friends. So, you know, all they wanted to do was tour. You know, I was married with a kid, you know, so was Peter. So, you know, it was, you know, there was some incongruity there. And that's what caused the friction. And I realized, you know, eventually I wanted to start my own band and be my own boss, which hasn't turned out bad at all.
Not at all. And before we jump into the Frehley's Comet record, real quick, in between that, in '84, you did some stuff on the Wendy O. Williams album. What do you remember?
I did one solo.
Yeah, what do you remember about her? I mean, you know, rest in peace, another icon.
I never met her. Gene just called me up and said, Ace, would you do a guitar solo? And she wasn't there. And I just came into the studio and, you know, did a couple of passes, and Gene said, okay, we got it.
Wow.
You know, it was fast and quick, and, you know, I let you know, Gene was producing, so I let him pick the solo that he liked, and he put it together.
That's cool. Okay, so yeah, Frehley's Comet, and we can talk about that and the Live Plus One EP pretty quickly. So at the time, I always loved that band name. What was your thought process then, as far as calling it Frehley's Comet versus calling it just Ace? You know, and obviously it's just Ace now. It's been just Ace ever since. Did you have that thing where you wanted to be in a band, but you wanted it to be solo?
I wanted to be, you know, I was used to being in a band and having like a brotherhood and a feeling of band unity rather than be a solo artist. I think I was a little hesitant. And even to this day, I really don't like being the boss and having to make all the decisions on what happens. You know, people call me up that work for me and say, do you want, you know, I'll say, you know, why don't you figure it out, you know? Because, you know, I really rather focus on playing guitar and singing and performing. You know, all the other business stuff drives me crazy. You know, I have attention deficit disorder, you know, and the ADD, you know, kicks in, and all of a sudden, you know, I get jammed up. And it was a lot easier with Kiss. You know, Paul and Gene did a lot of the work, a lot of the interviews. I just got up there and played my ass off and looked cool. And so it was a major departure for me to have to be the boss. And, you know, I came up with the idea for Frehley's Comet. And then invariably we'd be on tour and the promoters would put Ace Frehley's Comet. And the guys in the band would get aggravated. It's Frehley's Comet, not Ace Frehley's Comet, you know. And then I realized, you know, pretty much, you know, the people were coming to see me, not the other three guys in the band. So I pretty much disbanded that and started the Ace Frehley band.
Yeah. And then that, and
you know.
And would you say Trouble Walkin' then after Second Sighting, that was the first real just Ace record since the Kiss era?
What about Trouble Walking?
Would you say that was then the first?
I do have Trouble Walking, yes.
Well, Trouble Walkin' reunited you not only with Anton back on drums, but there's a bunch of backing vocals on there from Peter Criss. What was how did that come together? How did
I got Peter Criss? I think I got Pepe Castro from the Blues Magoos and
some of the Skid Row guys.
Yeah, we did a concert last year with Kings of Chaos, with Matt Sorum at a fair. That was a lot of fun. Sebastian Bach, great guy, great friend,
huge Kiss fan,
great front man, and it's always nice to have guest stars come in and help you out that are friends of yours, because it just makes the song that much better and that much more fun.
Indeed.
That's why these Origins records, are so much fun, because I'm always bringing guest artists on to put their little stamp on the song, which makes the song better. And
it makes those records feel like a party. When I listen to those records, I feel like I'm hanging out with you and all these great musicians that are just playing songs you love. It's got a real nice loose.
Now I'm getting calls from everybody. Can I be on Origins Vol.2?
Yeah. Well, speaking of, Peter coming in and doing some backup vocals on Trouble Walkin', you then returned the favor in the 90s, the 94 album that Peter put out, Catman #1. Do you remember anything about guesting on that and playing on Peter's record?
Did I guest on that?
You did.
I did. I don't remember. I'm totally honest with you.
Catman #1.
What did I do on Peter's record?
I want to say. I mean, some solos.
Huh?
I want to say some guitar solos.
Okay, that's possible.
You know what? Let me look, because I actually had it in my notes. All right, Peter, where are you? Peter Criss, where's my notes? Catman #1. And you know what? He may have. Who knows when he actually recorded that? Because I know it came out in '94. Where are you?
Yeah, there's just.
Where's Ace? There you go. Yeah, you played lead guitar on Bad Attitude, Walk the Line, and Blue Moon Over Brooklyn.
Really?
That was the record where Peter had half makeup on his face and no makeup on the other half.
Yeah, I was pretty loaded back in those days, and my memory. You could tell me I did a lot of things that I didn't do, and I'd believe you if you said so. But
well, it was a few years.
It
was a few years later after that, and I remember this vividly. Halloween 1995. My buddy and I coming home to make sure we were in front of the TV for the Beavis and Butthead Halloween special and the Kiss Unplugged show, because everybody knew by then that the Kiss Unplugged show was going to have Ace and Peter up on stage with the band, and all of us thought we knew what that was going to mean as well. And and I just, and we talked about this before too, so I won't belabor you forever with how amazing that was to watch on TV, but it was incredible. And Do you remember, it's a really specific question about that Unplugged show, do you remember any conversations about which songs you were going to do with the band at that MTV Unplugged show? How that was decided, or?
I, I, I think I did 2000 Man, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. I wanted to do that, because it was a signature song, and I thought the fans would enjoy me doing that acoustically was a challenge. What I don't remember what else did I do.
I think you were also on Nothing to Lose.
Yeah.
Which had Eric Singer and Peter both singing, I think. And then of course Rock and Roll All Night. Got to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I played that song so many times. I could play that, blindfolded.
Yeah.
But the fans went crazy.
Of course.
And I didn't expect that it was going to be that insane. And I don't think Paul and Gene expected it either. And I know they were slated to put out an album with Bruce and Eric, after that show. And they ended up holding back that record. And we went into talks about doing a reunion tour. So that's, the Unplugged session was what spawned the reunion tour and was the catalyst.
Of course. And I think once we all saw you guys together, there was no way we were going to let you not be together as the fans.
I think, didn't they had just finished a tour of conventions with all of our costumes. And I think Paul told me he was the one that painted the makeup on each of the mannequins, because he's such a good artist.
Yeah.
Like myself. And yeah.
Well, sure.
So, it seems like they were kind of promoting the makeup during those convention tours. So, it was a logical thing for fans to want to see the original lineup.
Okay, so we're almost through all the records, believe it or not.
Oh, God, that'd be nice.
That brings us to Psycho Circus, which was the attempt at the tours were doing so well, and obviously everyone was very excited about the original band being back together, and then that was let's try to make a record. You sang on that record.
Circus was a disappointment for me.
Yeah.
The only song I performed on was the one I wrote. Paul and Jane are such control freaks, and I don't know why I wasn't invited to play on a lot of the other songs, but I wasn't. And they used other musicians. The only song Peter played drums on was Into the Void. And I actually, Into the Void had a different title. It was called Shakin' Sharpshooter. And they were going to pass on it, but they liked the music part of it, the song. They liked the guitar riff, which I had written with Carl Cochran. And Gene walked out of the studio and said to me, why don't you do something spacey? Why don't you do something like Into the Void? And Gene actually came up with the title. And then I said, give me 45 minutes. I'll go up into the attic up here and I'll write the lyrics. Because they weren't even going to give me a song on the record, And I came in 45 minutes. I wrote all the lyrics for the song. I went in, performed it. Boom. It's like Into the Void. Because we had already recorded the music.
Yeah, and the thing about that record for fans especially too, it's like, why have the original band make a record if you're not going to have the original band on the record? So
I said to Paul, it's not really a Kiss record. It's half a Kiss record. And he goes, the fans aren't going to know the difference, But no. In reality, they do know the difference between my guitar sound and somebody else's.
That is 100% true. So, all right. So we're gonna get into the modern era of Ace Records, and right before we get there, there's one more guest appearance I want to ask you about. I just watched. A lot of people were watching recently the documentary about the Go-Go's and seeing their whole story and everything you know, and it reminded me that you played a bunch of guitar solos. Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go's, one of her solo records. Do you remember anything about that?
Friends with Kathy. I haven't seen her in a while. Yeah, we hung out a few times. I vaguely maybe remember doing a solo. Did I play more than one guitar solo on her record?
I think so.
I think I remember doing one, but maybe I did two. You know, I was living with some crazy actress model, and it was a real crazy time for me. But you know, when friends of mine would ask me to do favors, I wouldn't hesitate to say yes.
Yeah. Well, if you get a chance to see that Go-Go's documentary, I think it's on Showtime. It just came out over the last few months. It's really, really well put together, and there's a whole bunch of their story.
You have to talk about my solo, or
well, that's where we just landed there. We landed on Planet Ace. Anomaly. Let's talk about Anomaly.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, unfortunately, there's no Ace in the Go-Go's documentary, but maybe it's on the cutting room floor. Maybe it'll be in the bonus features on the DVD. But yeah, let's talk about Anomaly 2009.
Well, I remember Ken Gullick, you know, the vice president of marketing at E1. He told me that when he told several people that they had just signed Ace Frehley to do a record, a lot of people said, you'll never get it done. You know, it's going to be a piece of crap. You know, Ace is fucked up on drugs. Excuse my French. But, you know, I wasn't. I was together. I was focused. And I wanted to do the very best record as possible. I brought in Marty Fredrickson, you know, who worked with Aerosmith and Shania Twain and several other famous artists. It was a great producer to work with, and mixed it. You know, and I'll never forget the day I was friends with this gal who wanted, I was, you know, we were looking to do a cover song, and she came up with the idea to do the Slade song. And I brought it up to Marty, and we just tracked it in a matter of an hour. We listened to the original, and I figured it out because it's not a complicated song. And then we just overdubbed and built it up. And then we put drums on it. And I wasn't even there when the drummer put drums on it. And I figured the drummer who played on that.
Well, Anton's on a bunch of the record, but he's not on every song.
Anton didn't play drums on that song.
On that song, yeah.
Who it was?
Scott Coogan. Does that sound right?
It wasn't Scott Coogan either.
Huh.
It was some drummer that Marty recommended. I think he had been working with. And I forget it.
Brian somebody. Brian.
Brian maybe. That
kind
of right. I'm so bad with names.
Well, you know what's cool is you can see the seeds of the Origin records all throughout your career. You've always paid it forward to your influences. I mean, yeah, Fox on the Run being on Anomaly, and of course 2000 Man going all the way back. And you know, I love that that's always been a part of your DNA, and a part of your own music that you create is acknowledging the other stuff that you love. And it helps Kiss fans understand a little bit about the blueprint and discover a lot of great music through these great songs that you're interpreting. So I think it's a real gift. Space Invader. There was a few years in between. The opposite of the old Kiss ways in the 70s. What do you think about when you think about Space Invader? It's funny because I feel like that record just came out, but then before I talked to you today, looking through the catalog, I'm like, man, that was 6 years ago. How did that happen? How was it 6 years already?
How did that happen? How did it happen that I went for 20 years without an album?
Yeah.
Drugs and alcohol, you know. Thank God I woke up. But Space Invader, I worked hard on. I love that song, Change. I love the message. I took my time on that record.
And that was another great Ken Kelly album cover.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that record too. And then that brings us to Origins.
I designed that album cover.
What's that?
I designed that Anomaly.
Yeah?
Yeah, I did the artwork for that.
Oh, no, Anomaly. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're talking Space Invader.
Oh, okay.
That was Ken Kelly, right?
I just went into another dimension for a second. Don't worry about it.
But a shift. The dimensional shift. They happen.
Ace's dimension.
Hey, I love hanging out in Ace's dimension. If you knew how excited I've been to hang out in Ace's dimension today, it's fine with me. All right, so that brings us into Origins Volume 1. And of course, that great music video with you and Paul hanging out. And that was such a great song too. But that whole record is just great and a lot of fun. And did you have in mind, as you were picking songs for Origins Volume 1, that there would be a Volume 2? Did you find yourself going, okay, there's too many songs I want to do. I'm gonna have to save some for later?
I kind of live life one day at a time, and I just put my best foot forward and try to do the best possible job on a record that I can do, and hope that people are going to enjoy it and like it. I mean, I'm really surprised that most of the interviewers who have heard Origins Volume 2 think that that's a better record now than Origins Volume 1, which is really exciting, because I thought Origins Volume 1 was a really good record.
Absolutely. I mean, Kinks, Zeppelin, obviously, Thin Lizzy, and a lot of great guitar players with the great Ace on Origins Volume 1 /
yeah, it was great
A5.
He's a good friend of mine.
And then I think another one of my favorite album covers was the Spaceman record, which was the next original.
That was a fun photo session, because we tried to recreate that photo session I did with Barry Levine, where I'm sitting on a plexiglass throne in a silver jump spacesuit, and they couldn't find a plexiglass throne, so they came up with that silver one. But it worked. It worked.
And that first track on Spaceman was you wrote with Gene. Yeah. What was that experience like?
Yeah, we wrote 2 songs for that record, and I think they both came out really well.
Oh yeah, the other one was Your Wish Is My Command. Right?
Yeah,
that was later, like track 3 or 4 or something like that. Yeah, and then we're here. We arrived. We're at Origins Volume 2.
We have arrived.
We have arrived.
I'm going to be able to go to the store soon.
And of course, as we're talking right now, you just a couple hours ago put out the Beatles cover with John 5, who was on the first Origins record.
Which I didn't even realize was happening today, but that's okay.
Well, that just means people are doing their job. Things are in motion.
I was surprised. I was really surprised at my vocals. That I never dreamed that I could do a McCartney song and pull it off. But I guess my voice was getting stronger from all these years of touring, and having to sing 10, 12 songs a night. So
And Lita Ford is back.
Perfect, right?
What's that?
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, indeed. Finally, right? Yeah, and Lita Ford is back on this one, as well as John 5. And then, dude, I want to talk about Robin Zander from Cheap Trick, a great rock band that was formative for me as a kid, just like Kiss. What's the relationship with Robin Zander? How did he end up?
Well, I've known Robin forever. I mean, those guys used to open for us.
Mm-hmm.
They must have done at least 75 to 100 shows, in the 70s when we were touring.
Kiss is why I know about Cheap Trick.
Yeah. I guess we gave them their big break and helped break them. They're all great guys, you know, great band, fun to be around. I mean, we used to party a lot after the shows. Those guys were a riot. And, you know, I talk about it in my book, No Regrets. And, but I had bumped into Robin, you know, 3 or 4 years ago. I was doing an autograph session and he showed up with his family and he mentioned to me he'd love to sing on one of my records. And I never forgot that. And then, you know, when this record came around, I wanted to do a Humble Pie song so bad because I'm a huge Humble Pie fan. And I was there both nights at the Fillmore East when they recorded live at the Fillmore East. And, but I can't sing like Steve Marriott, not on my best day. So I thought of Robin, you know, I called him up, I sent him an MP3 and he just killed it.
Yeah, it's so great. It's really, really great song, a really great version of that song.
I had to Robin.
So I also want to ask you, of course, being a Kiss fan, I got to ask you about working with Bruce on the Hendrix song, right?
I've been friends with Bruce for years. You know, there was never any animosity. You know, I decided to leave Kiss, so whoever took over, you know, they did the best they could. You know, and I think out of all the guitar players that have played in my stead, you know, I think I like Bruce the best. And I think
Absolutely.
he's probably the best guitarist out of all the guys that ever took over my, you know, tried to fill my shoes. And he never copied my solos note for note. He'd always put a little spin on it. And, but we did, I did a Kiss cruise a couple of years back and Bruce was on the same tour, on the same cruise rather. And, he heard I was doing an Origins Vol.2 and he expressed interest in performing a solo on it. And he wanted to do a Hendrix song and I wanted to do a Hendrix song. I said, let's pick one. And we came up with Manic Depression and he just killed the solo.
So cool. And by the way, and I totally agree with you. And I also think, you know, I've gotten to interview Bruce a few times. He's a very classy guy, very, you know, kind of gentle. He was always very reverent and respectful of your massive contribution to Kiss. And yeah, I mean, you know, look, I love the songs that Vinnie Vincent wrote for Kiss, but when it comes to performance and playing and all of that, I mean, yeah, Bruce is the only other guy that ever came close to you know, filling that spot. So I love hearing him on your record. Super cool. Do you know, while I've got you, well, let me ask you this. Which song do you think will be the most surprising when people get a chance to hear all of Origins Vol.2? Because, you know, you've done more Kinks and some more Zeppelin. And
Kicks. You know, I think there's probably a lot of my fans that don't even know who Paul Revere and the Raiders are.
Right.
Kicks is going to be a surprise. And I love the message, you know, the anti-drug message in that song. I thought it was well written. And I also did something special on that song. I added a guitar solo that's not on the original, you know, with 3 different harmony parts. And my engineer, Alex Salzman, helped me out with that. And I think Lola's going to be, Lola's got a chance of being a hit, you know. I mean, it was a very controversial song when it first came out, but, you know, today in 2020, you know, talking about transvestite, I mean, what's the big deal? Nobody cares anymore. You know, are you in the closet? Are you out of the closet? Who cares? You know?
It was way ahead of its time in that sense.
So, I mean, but I think I did a good version of it. My girlfriend, Laura Cove, sang harmonies on it. And I think it came out great.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And I got to say, lastly, about the Origins Vol.2, I love, you know, when I first saw the cover art, I pulled it up on my computer and put it side by side with Volume 1. And I love how they complement each other. You know, it's like
I believe we got the same graphic artist, and he did a great job on Origins Volume 1. So, you know, we figured we used the same guy, and I love the way he came up. Obviously, I got different versions of it and changed a few things around and made suggestions like I did on the first album cover, because I changed some of the guitars around on the Origins Vol.1 cover. I said, this guitar doesn't belong here. You got to switch this one with that one. And, the label was gracious enough to, take my suggestions. And I think it's cute the way we, there's little nuances, like on Origins Vol.1, the blimp says 27, which is my birthday. On Origins Vol.2, on the clock, it says my birthday, 4/27. Little silly things like that.
Easter eggs.
And we'll get a kick out of.
Yeah. Easter eggs. And it also makes you want to have the vinyl so you can hold it.
The flying saucers floating around in space.
Yeah. Well,
now the whole idea, Paul and Gene, sometimes what killed me about those guys is they took the music business, they took the whole thing so seriously. And I said, take a deep breath and just remember, this is supposed to be fun. To me, rock and roll is about having fun. You get out, kids go to rock concerts to have fun. When I stopped having fun, that's when I quit Kiss. The whole thing became such a merchandising monster, and it became more about the merchandising and what we look like than the music. And, it just became too overbearing for me. And the music was getting lost, and people were talking more about the show than the music. And me being a purist, to me, it's all about the music. You want to look cool and you want to present yourself well on stage, but once that overshadows what you're doing musically, then it wasn't work. That wasn't working for me.
Well, I would say I think Kiss is the template for a rock band. Kiss, the Beatles. When you think about bands where everybody had their persona, their individual personality, and I don't just mean the characters you created, I mean just the people you were and what you brought to the band. And I think those bands work so well because of some of those complementary differences, where you have some people that see things this way and somebody that sees things that way. And, you have Gene and Paul doing the business and being smart about those things. And then you have Ace there having a good time and adding some soul.
They were smart about some things. Believe it or not, a lot of times they made decisions where I said, hey, are you guys crazy? You can't do this. I remember once they wanted to spend $100,000 on using spotlights in the pit and bouncing them off a mirror. And I go, you're going to be blocking seats and this isn't going to work. And you're not thinking this through. A lot of times I save them from making blunders.
That's what I'm saying. It's a balance.
I wasn't silent. I gave a lot of input, but a lot of times Paul and Gene take credit for, this, that, and the other thing. I designed the KISS logo.
Yep. And you can take credit for saying we shouldn't put out the Elder right now.
What was great about KISS was, you went to a KISS concert for 2 hours and you forgot your problems. It was entertainment. And, that's not the case always, when you go see a band today.
Amen. Well, before I let you go, I know the label's probably going to be mad at both of us for this because we're promoting Volume 2, but you mentioned Volume 3, so I got to ask you, are you already have some songs in mind for Volume 3, or are you already kind of itching to, we're all stuck at home anyway. Are you thinking about?
Right now I'm focusing on my next studio record, I've written 3 songs. I just moved into a new place. I moved back east. I'm building a recording studio in the basement. So I'm real excited about recording, my next studio record. And I'm calling up friends of mine who I've written with in the past and saying, send me some guitar riffs or song ideas so we can develop them. That's what I'm excited about now. I finished Origins Vol.2 last Christmas. So before you know, it's going to be Christmas again, and a year is going by, and the album still hasn't been released because of the pandemic. But it's a great record, and I think the fans are going to enjoy it. At least I hope they will.
It's really great. I love it, Ace. Well, if you could you know, I don't expect you to have seen my interviews before, except for the one we did together, but people who watch my interviews, they're going to know I'm not smiling like this, like an idiot all through an interview usually. So I love talking to you. And, you know, you're one of my favorite people to do this with. And I'm such a big fan. I love Origins Vol.2. I'm so excited for people to are finally starting to hear it, literally starting today. And yeah, for it to get out there. So all the best to you, man. Thanks so much for doing this with me.
It's always a pleasure talking to you. You always have good questions, and, you know, they make sense, and, you know, it makes me think, and, you know, you make me work at trying to come up with answers, because like I said, my memory isn't what it used to be, but, you know, that's good.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm struggling right now to try to, you know, come up with stories for my next book. And, you know, you just helped me during this interview. So.
Oh, good. Nice. Yeah,
I forgot all those albums I played on, and I should talk about it in my book.
Yeah.
My next book.
And there's a bunch more, by the way. Those were just a few that I wanted to sneak in. There's a bunch more you played on.
There's a lot of things I've done that just kind of, you know, was a one-day thing, and you forgot about it the next day.
Yeah.
But, you know.
I was telling Bill earlier, David Ellefson from Megadeth, who's become a really good friend and is another band I love. One time we were doing an interview, and he said, "You know what? You should tell this story, because you you know this story better than I remember it." So that's a huge compliment, man. I'll take it. I'm happy to do it. Well, Ace, have a good rest of your day. Thanks for taking so much time out to do this with me. It was so much fun. And,
my pleasure. God bless. Have a great day, and thanks for the positive input.
Oh, man. Thanks so much, brother.
I'd like to say thanks to all my fans for all the support over the years, and I hope you enjoy the new album.
Hell yeah. Awesome.